Chronicles of the Ashen Crow, Chapters 11-20. Chapter 11. The Obsidian Star Guild's headquarters was exactly as the name suggested, a repurposed warehouse on the industrial city's edge. Its once red paint faded to a rusty brown. It lacked the gleaming opulence of the Aegis Guild's tower. Here, the air smelled of oil, dust, and faintly of ozone and blood. Kaelen pushed open a heavy side door and stepped into a cavernous base. Training dummies, some slashed and battered, stood in one corner. Weapon racks held an assortment of chipped blades and staves. The place was sparsely populated. A hulking man with a shaved head and thick, metal-reinforced gloves was methodically punching a sandbag, each impact sounding like a small detonation. A young woman with vibrant green hair was meticulously polishing a long, elegant rifle, her movements precise. And then there was the man who approached Kaelen. He was lanky, with a worn leather jacket and a tired but friendly smile. "You the new recruit?" "Kaelen." Kaelen nodded, holding up his E-rank ID. "That's me." "Jax," the man said, offering a hand. Kaelen shook it, noting the calluses. "I handle logistics and rookie wrangling. Welcome to the bottom of the food chain." His smile was self-deprecating but genuine. "Don't let the ambience fool you. We are a small guild, but we look out for our own." Jax led him further inside. "The big guy is Rgstories, our vanguard. D rank, tough as nails. The lady with the rifle is Lyra, our sniper and scout. Also D rank. Don't get on her bad side." He lowered his voice. "And the grumpy one in the office is Silas, our guild master." Through a grimy window, Kaelen saw a middle-aged man with a severe face, and a deep scar running from his temple to his jaw, scowling at a financial spreadsheet on his screen. "Our usual healer just left for a bigger guild," Jax continued, his tone turning serious. "Which leaves us in a bind. We've got a scouting contract for a newly stabilized D-rank eclipse, Whispering Caverns. Low phantom density, but the topography is unstable. Our job is to map the first 2 levels and identify any mana crystal deposits. Your mana analysis skill could be useful for the latter." A D-rank dungeon. Perfect. His quest required at least a D-rank. "We leave in 1 hour. Gear up. We have basic spare armor in the locker over there. Find something that fits. Any questions?" Kaelen had 1,000, but only one was relevant. "What's the pay?" Jax grinned. "A flat fee for the scout, plus a 2% share of any mana crystals we tag for extraction. For an E-rank, it's survivable. It's a start." It was more than a start. It was an opportunity. Kaelen nodded. "I'll be ready." Chapter 12. The spare armor was a mismatched set of reinforced leather and padded cloth. It was bulky and uncomfortable on his thin frame, but it offered some protection. As he fastened the last strap, Lyra approached him, her rifle slung over her shoulder. "E-rank, huh?" she said, her voice cool and assessing. Her eyes, a piercing hazel, scanned him from head to toe. "Mana analysis. Can you at least tell if a phantom is about to explode? Or just where the shiny rocks are?" "I can identify mana concentrations and fluctuations," Kaelen replied, keeping his voice neutral. It wasn't a lie. His warden system likely could do that and more. "See that you do," she said, her gaze lingering on him for a moment longer before she walked away. "Try not to die. Paperwork is a pain." Rgstories merely grunted in his direction, hefting a massive tower shield onto his back. He didn't seem hostile, just indifferent. Another E-rank who probably wouldn't last. Silas emerged from his office, pulling on a worn combat vest. "Listen up," he barked, his voice gravelly. "This is a mapping job, not a glory hunt. We go in, we map, we tag crystals, we get out. No engagements unless absolutely necessary. Jax is point on mapping. Lyra, Overwatch. Rgstories, Vanguard. Newbie." Silas's eyes fell on Kaelen. "You stick with Jax. Do what he says. Your only job is to point at rocks and not trigger any cave-ins. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Kaelen said. "Good. Let's move." They piled into a beat-up, armored transport vehicle. As they drove towards the designated eclipse gate on the city's perimeter, Kaelen watched the cityscape change. The gleaming towers gave way to fortified walls and military checkpoints. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and the palpable tension of a frontier. And there, in a designated containment zone, was the gate to the Whispering Caverns. It was a swirling vortex of earthy browns and deep greys, stabilized by large emitter arrays planted around it. It was far larger and more imposing than the fissure he had entered. Proximity to D-rank eclipse confirmed. Quest, Foundation, objective viable. Initiating passive scan. Eclipse stability, 94%. Anomaly detected. Minor spatial warping in lower strata. Kaelen's breath hitched. His system was already interacting with the dungeon. This was real. Gear check, Silas ordered, pulling a well-used axe from his back. It was time. Chapter 13. Stepping through the gate was like being plunged into a different world. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of wet stone and something metallic. They stood in a vast, subterranean cavern. Giant, glowing mushrooms and patches of phosphorescent moss provided an eerie, blue-green illumination. The ceiling was lost in darkness high above, and from the depths, a faint, whispering sound could be heard, giving the dungeon its name. Eyes sharp, Silas said, his voice low. The whispers can be disorienting. Rorick, take the front. Jax, start the map. Lyra, find us a high vantage point. The team moved with practiced efficiency. Lyra scaled a nearby rock formation with effortless grace, her rifle scanning the cavern ahead. Rorick moved forward, his shield held ready. Jax pulled out a tablet-like device, projecting a 3D map of the area which began to fill in as they advanced. Kaelen followed Jax, his own senses stretched to their limits. With his veil shroud active, he felt like a ghost, but he could also feel the dungeon itself. It was like a living, breathing entity, and his paradox core was a foreign object within its body. He could feel the foundational properties. The quest mentioned, the specific resonance of the stone, the flow of earth-aligned mana, the delicate balance that kept the caverns from collapsing. See anything, kid? Jax asked, not looking up from his mapping. Kaelen focused. He let his awareness, guided by the Warden protocol, seep into the surroundings. To his surprise, his vision shifted. The physical world became slightly translucent, overlaid with a web of shimmering silver lines, the dungeon's mana flow. There's a strong mana concentration about 50 meters to the left, Kaelen said, pointing towards a cluster of large crystals. Behind that rockfall. Jax looked at his scanner, which was showing only faint readings. You sure? Maigi's barely picking that up. I'm sure, Kaelen said, his voice firm. Jax shrugged and marked the spot on his map. All right. We'll check it out. Good eye. A small notification appeared in Kaelen's vision. Assimilation progress, 1%. Analyzing foundational mana matrix. It was working. Just by being here and actively perceiving the dungeon with his Warden senses, he was beginning the assimilation process. Chapter 14. They navigated deeper into the caverns. The whispering grew louder, sometimes sounding like faint voices, other times like the shifting of ancient stone. They encountered their first phantoms, low-level stone lurchers. Creatures that looked like bipedal, lizards made of rock and shadow. Rorick didn't wait for them to attack. He slammed his shield into the ground, creating a concussive wave that staggered the creatures. Lyra, from her perch, fired 2 shots. The reports were sharp cracks that echoed through the caverns. Each shot struck a lurcher's core, causing it to shatter into dust and dissipating mana. It was clean, efficient, and brutal. Kaelen watched, fascinated and horrified. This was how hunters operated. They didn't see the phantoms as echoes of a dying reality. They saw them as monsters and obstacles. His system provided a cold analysis. Phantom, stone lurcher, D-rank minion. Threat level, negligible. Mana signature, earth aspected, unstable. Assimilation potential, low. Could he assimilate a phantom? The thought was both intriguing and disturbing. Clear, Lyra's voice came through the comms piece Jax had given him. Moving up, Silas said. Jax, the newbie was right. That's a rich vein of mid-grade earth crystals. Good call. Jax clapped Kaelen on the shoulder. See, you're earning your keep already. For a moment, Kaelen felt a flicker of normalcy, of belonging. It was a dangerous feeling. He wasn't here to belong. He was here to consume. They pressed on, mapping tunnels and identifying resource nodes. The assimilation progress slowly ticked up to 3%. He was learning the language of this place. Then, as they entered a narrower tunnel, his system flared a warning. Alert, spatial instability detected. Location, 20 meters ahead. A risk, localized collapse. Wait, Kaelen said, holding up a hand. The team stopped. Silas turned, his expression impatient. What is it? The ceiling ahead. It's unstable. The mana flow is fractured. It could come down any moment. Jax checked his scanner. I'm not reading any significant instability, Kaelen. It's there, Kaelen insisted, his warden sensors screaming at him. Silas looked from Kaelen to the tunnel ahead. He trusted his equipment, but he also trusted a recruit's gut feeling when it came to survival. Rorik, check it. Carefully. Rorik moved forward, tapping the ceiling with the edge of his shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deep groan, a network of cracks spread across the tunnel roof. Fall back. Silas yelled. They scrambled back just as a large section of the tunnel collapsed, sending a cloud of dust billowing towards them. When it settled, the path was completely blocked. Jax stared at Kaelen, his earlier friendliness replaced by open astonishment. How did you know? Kaelen met his gaze. My analysis. It's more sensitive to structural mana than to crystals. Silas grunted, looking at the rubble, then back at Kaelen. A new, calculating respect was in his eyes. You just saved us a lot of trouble, or worse. All right, rookie. From now on, you're on cave-in duty. Lead the way. Chapter 15. The dynamic of the team shifted after the cave-in. Kaelen was no longer just the silent E rank. He had proven his unique value. Silas now consulted him on which paths to take, and Jax watched his every move with keen interest. Kaelen guided them through a series of winding, stable tunnels, his assimilation progress steadily climbing to 8%. He could feel the foundational properties of the Whispering Caverns, becoming clearer, like a song he was slowly learning to hum. His quest updated. Quest, foundation, in progress. Objective, assimilate the foundational properties of a D rank or higher eclipse. 8%. Sub-objective located. Resolve spatial warping anomaly in lower strata. Reward, unlock Risen command module. The system was now giving him a specific target. The minor spatial warping it had detected initially. They reached a vast, central chamber. A massive grotto with a still, black lake at its center. Stalactites and stalagmites the size of ancient trees filled the space. On the far side, a natural stone archway led deeper down, pulsing with a distorted, wrong energy. The air around it shimmered like a heat haze. Kaelen guided them through a series of winding, stable tunnels, his assimilation progress steadily climbing to 8%. He could feel the foundational properties of the Whispering Caverns, becoming clearer, like a song he was slowly learning to hum. His quest updated. Quest, foundation, in progress. Objective, assimilate the foundational properties of a D rank or higher eclipse. 8%. Sub-objective located. Resolve spatial warping anomaly in lower strata. Reward, unlock Risen command module. The system was now giving him a specific target. The minor spatial warping it had detected initially. They reached a vast, central chamber. A massive grotto with a still, black lake at its center. Stalactites and stalagmites the size of ancient trees filled the space. On the far side, a natural stone archway led deeper down, pulsing with a distorted, wrong energy. The air around it shimmered like a heat haze. That's it, Kaelen said, pointing to the archway. The source of the instability. It's a spatial warp. Lyra's voice came over the comms, tense. I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from that point. It's unstable, Captain. Recommend we mark it and leave it for a dedicated hazard team. Silas frowned. If it's that unstable, it could cause a chain reaction and destroy the entire dungeon. along with the crystal veins we just mapped. Our contract is void if the dungeon collapses before extraction. He looked at the archway, then at his team. We take a cautious look. Rorick, maximum guard. Lyra, anything moves, you have clearance to engage. Jax, record everything. Kaelen, you're with me. Tell me what we are dealing with. This was more than he had bargained for. He had expected to passively assimilate the dungeon, not confront its heart of darkness. As they approached the shimmering archway, the whispering of the caverns became a frantic, overlapping chorus of panic and warning. The temperature dropped sharply. Warning, anomalous signature detected. Classification, nascent spatial tear. Assimilation of this anomaly is critical for quest completion. This was the moment. This was why he was here. Chapter 16. The space beyond the archway wasn't a tunnel. It was a pocket dimension, a sphere of distorted space about the size of a small house. The walls swirled with conflicting images, glimpses of the cavern, patches of void, and fractured memories of the dungeon's formation. In the center of the sphere floated a core of violent, chaotic energy, lashing out like a wounded animal. "This is bad," Jax whispered, his mapping device fritzing with static. "This is a full-blown fissure in the making." "The foundation here is broken," Kaelen said, his warden's senses overwhelmed by the wrongness. "It's not just unstable. It's diseased." The word felt right. This was a cancer on the veil. A small piece of the anomaly the warden had spoken of. Assimilation protocol available. Initiate assimilation of anomaly. Warning, host's assimilation authority, E, is low. Process will be taxing. He had no choice. "Sir," Kaelen said, turning to Silas, "I think I can stabilize this." Silas's eyes widened. "With what? Your E-rank analysis? How?" "I don't know how," Kaelen said, which was the truth. "I just know I can. It's a feeling. The same feeling that warned me about the cave-in." Before Silas could answer, the nascent anomaly reacted to their presence. Tendrils of distorted space shot out from the core, lashing towards them. "Shield!" Rorick roared, planting himself in front of the group. The spatial tendrils slammed into his tower shield. They didn't make a sound, but the metal of the shield groaned and twisted, as if aging sentries in an instant. Lyra's rifle barked, but her rounds passed harmlessly through the core. Their trajectories bent into nonsense. "It's not a physical target." She yelled. Another tendril snaked past Rorick's shield, heading straight for Jax. There was no time to think. Kaelen acted on instinct. He stepped forward, raised his hand, and deactivated his veil shroud. For the first time in front of them, he let his true power show. Not as a flashy hunter, but as a warden. A knot of solidified shadow and light. A miniature version of the paradox core, manifested in his palm. The air around him stilled. The frantic whispers of the caverns fell silent. The spatial tendril recoiled as if burned. "Kaelen." Jax breathed, his face a mask of shock. Kaelen ignored him. He focused all his will on the anomalous core. Assimilation protocol, execute. Chapter 17. Agony. It was a different kind of pain than the initial bonding. This was a battle of wills. The nascent anomaly was a wild, feral thing, fighting against the order his paradox core represented. He wasn't just absorbing mana. He was trying to override a corrupted piece of reality itself. Lines of corrosive energy, the color of sickly green, fought against the silver and black light of his core. The pocket dimension shuddered violently. "What is he doing?" Rorick bellowed, struggling to hold his ground against the spatial turbulence. "I have no idea." Silas shouted back, his axe held ready but useless. "But look." The chaotic core was slowly, painfully, being drawn towards Kaelen's outstretched hand. It was shrinking, its violent energy being unraveled and consumed. Kaelen's body screamed in protest. His assimilation authority was too low for this. It was like trying to drink an ocean through a straw. He felt his own life force, the energy the core had given him, being drained. Core integrity, 87%, 75%, 64%. Assimilation progress, 45%, 60%. He was winning, but at a cost. The system warnings flashed red in his vision. He was pushing himself to the brink. Kaelen, whatever you're doing, hurry. Lyra yelled from her perch, the entire grotto now shaking. The whole chamber is destabilizing. With a final, monumental effort of will, Kaelen pulled. The anomalous core gave one last violent shudder and then imploded, streaming into the paradox core in his palm like water down a drain. The distorted sphere of space snapped back to normal, leaving behind a perfectly stable, if slightly scarred, stone archway. The whispering in the caverns returned, but it was calm now. A gentle, flowing sound, like a quiet stream. Silence fell. Kaelen collapsed to his knees, gasping. The paradox core in his palm faded away. His core integrity was at a dangerous 52%, but the quest notification glowed triumphantly. Assimilation complete. Quest, Foundation, complete. Assimilation authority increased to A. Core integrity will regenerate to 100% over time. Reward, Risen Command Module unlocked. New skill available, Command Risen. Chapter 18. No one spoke for a long moment. The only sound was Kaelen's ragged breathing and the gentle drip of water in the now stable grotto. Jax was the first to move, rushing to Kaelen's side. Kid, are you okay? What in the hell was that? Kaelen looked up, his vision swimming. He saw the faces of his temporary teammates, Jax's concern, Rorik's stunned confusion, Lyra's calculating stare from across the lake, and Silas's unreadable, intense gaze. He had to say something. He had to explain. It's my real power, Kaelen rasped, the lie forming on his lips, woven with strands of truth. The mana analysis was a misdiagnosis. My ability, it's to stabilize unstable mana, to fix broken things. He gestured weakly at the now normal archway. Like that. Silas walked over slowly, his eyes never leaving Kaelen's face. He looked from the archway to Kaelen, then back again. An E rank. Just neutralized a spatial anomaly that would have required an A rank. Specialized team to contain. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of unbelievable fact. He also saved our lives. Twice, Jax added firmly, putting a supportive hand on Kaelen's shoulder. Lyra landed softly beside them, having jumped down from her perch. She didn't say anything, just looked at Kaelen with a new, deep-seated curiosity. Your mana signature, she said quietly. When you did that, it vanished. It was like you weren't even there. Kaelen activated his veil shroud again, the comfortable emptiness returning. It's part of the ability. I have to lower my defenses to interact with the instability. Silas finally nodded, a decision made. What I just saw was not E rank, not even close. He looked at Kaelen, his gaze piercing. The association screwed up your evaluation. Badly. But that's their problem. Our problem is that you're a secret weapon. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. Listen to me, kid. Abilities like yours, they don't stay secret for long. Big guilds would kill to have a specialist who can secure unstable dungeons. They'd either recruit you or see you as a threat. He straightened up. As of now, your official record stays E rank with mana analysis. That's your cover. But within Obsidian Star, you're our stabilization specialist. Your cut of the pay just tripled. Understood. It was more than he could have hoped for. A place to hide, a team that would protect his secret for their own benefit, and unrestricted access to the very dungeons he needed to fortify. He nodded, pushing himself to his feet. Understood. Good, Silas said, a grim smile touching his scarred face. Now let's get the hell out of this hole. We've got a payday to collect. As they turned to leave, Kaelen glanced back at the archway. His system was already analyzing the new skill. Skill, Command Risen, Level 1. Allows the Warden to bind the spectral remains of defeated phantoms, creating loyal servants known as Risen. Current capacity, 2 halves. Requirements, defeated Phantom Core. He had his foot in the door. He had completed his first real quest, and he had gained a terrifying new power. The Ashen Crow was learning to fly. Chapter 19. The return trip was quiet. The tension from the encounter replaced by a weary exhaustion and a thick, unspoken question hanging in the air. They passed through the eclipse gate and back into the bright, artificial light of the containment zone. The debrief with the association officials was a masterclass in half-truths led by Silas. He reported a successful mapping operation, identified several rich crystal veins, and noted a minor spatial fluctuation that had stabilized on its own. Kaelen's role was mentioned only in the context of his mana analysis, skill helping to locate deposits. The officials, bored and overworked, stamped their forms without a second thought. The Obsidian Star Guild was paid, and the contract was closed. Back at the guild warehouse, Silas distributed the credits. When he handed Kaelen his share, it was a substantial stack of chits, far more than an E-rank had any right to earn. "That's your new rate," Silas said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Get some rest. We have another job in 2 days. A C-rank sewer system infestation. Your stabilization skill probably won't be needed, but your mana sight will." A C-rank. The phantoms would be stronger, more numerous. Perfect. Jax clapped him on the back. "You're full of surprises, kid. I'm glad you're on our team." The sentiment seemed genuine. Rorik gave him a slow, deliberate nod, the highest form of recognition from the silent giant. Lyra simply said, "Don't be late," before turning to clean her rifle. But the earlier hostility was gone. Kaelen returned to his apartment, the credits feeling heavy in his pocket. He had money. He had a purpose. He had a team, of sorts. But he was alone with the truth. He sat on his bed and pulled up the Risen command module. It was time to test his new power. Chapter 20. He needed a phantom core, a low-level one. He couldn't just go back into a dungeon alone. His E-rank ID would raise alarms. But he remembered the C-rank breach from the day he got his diagnosis. The cleanup would have been extensive. But in a city this size, there were always remnants. Fringe markets where hunters sold unregistered loot, and where certain unsavory types traded in forbidden things. He knew a place. The Undermarket, a clandestine bazaar operating in the abandoned subway tunnels. It was a dangerous place for a lone, seemingly weak E-rank, but his veil shroud made him effectively invisible to casual scans. He descended into the depths of the city, the air growing thick with the smell of rust and decay. A flickering neon sign, half broken, read the bazaar. He pulled up his hood and stepped inside. The place was a chaotic maze of stalls. People traded in monster parts, cursed artifacts, and stolen guild tech. He moved through the crowd, his warden senses alert. He could feel the residue of dozens of different phantoms. He found a stall run by a haggard-looking man with a cybernetic eye, selling various shimmering, crystalline objects, phantom cores. "I need one. The weakest, most stable you have," Kaelen said, his voice low. The vendor eyed him suspiciously. "E-rank. Ha! What would you want with a core? They're useless unless you're an enchanter or a mad scientist." "Personal project," Kaelen said, sliding a credit chit across the counter. It was a significant amount for a low-grade core. The vendor shrugged, pocketing the chit and handing him a small, grey, pebble-like core. It was cold to the touch. From a D-rank dust imp barely has any energy left. "You got ripped off, kid." "Thanks for your concern," Kaelen said flatly, pocketing the core and melting back into the crowd. Back in the absolute privacy of his apartment, he held the dust imp core in his hand. He focused on the Risen command skill. Target acquired. Phantom core, dust imp, D-rank minion, dot. Initiating binding ritual. Shadow and light bled from his palm, enveloping the grey core. He felt a minuscule pull on his own energy as the core's residual. Mana was overwritten by his own. Warden authority. The core turned from dull grey to a muted, smoky black, with a single pinprick of silver light at its center. It rose from his palm, hovering in the air. Then, shadows coalesced around it, forming a small, humanoid shape about a foot tall. It had large, glowing silver eyes and a body of swirling grey smoke. It hovered in the air, looking at him with blank, unwavering loyalty. Risen created, dust imp, shadow. A rank, A. Abilities, basic reconnaissance, minor distraction. Loyalty, absolute. Kaelen stared at the small, shadowy creature. It was his. A soldier in an army only he could build. A tool for the war he had to fight. He pointed to a cup on the other side of the room. Fetch. The risen imp zipped across the room, a blur of smoke, and returned a second later, holding the cup in its tiny, vaporous hands. A slow, cold smile spread across Kaelen's face for the first time since his transformation. He was no longer just a candidate. He was a warden with a soldier. The fortification of the Vale had begun.